Today I have the privilege of speaking with Baz DuBois, someone many people know as a builder, designer, speaker, and TV presenter, but who is also a husband, father, and on the board of directors for Are You OK Day. His life story is one of resilience, growing up in tough circumstances, facing crippling depression, battling cancer more than once, becoming a father later in life, and still finding ways to give to others. Much of that story is captured in his book, Life Force, but I know Baz differently as my next door neighbor. My old next door neighbor, I should say.
What do you mean, I'm old?
No. My previous house. I know Baz as a beautiful man with a beautiful heart, a mentor to me, and somebody who my whole family, and my family, my children, and Chloe, and also the community, love deeply.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Welcome, Baz. Okay.
Where do you start after that intro?
I know.
Where do you start?
Okay, so let's just touch on this because I just want to thank you for being here. So Are You OK Day was last week. And just off camera, you said in the last 7 days, you have addressed or spoken to 20,000 people?
It'd be something like that. Yeah, I've spoke to a lot of corporations in the last month. In the last 7 days, I've been in 3 states, and next week I'll be down in Canberra and Melbourne again. So yeah, I've covered a gamut there of people, but that excites me because I know sharing stories, as we're doing here, has an incredible positive ripple effect on communities. And as I was once described, and I like the title, as a modern day elder, that inspires me because sharing is strengthening our communities. And I'm 65 years old. As you know, I live with blood cancer and incurable cancer, and I have 2 incredible 13-year-old twins. So strengthening community through conversations like this and through what I do with Are You OK Day and the Leukemia Foundation, my workshops and my keynote speaking, I was going to say it thrills me. It does thrill me. It excites me, and it strengthens me, and that's a positive. It's a positive fuel.
I love that. I was at the Kite Festival on the weekend in Bondi, and I was with my children, Oscar and Mimi, and I pulled them together for a second, and I said, I want to share with you both what I love about Bondi. And what I shared with them is how Bondi brings people together, and how it's, there was so many different people down at the festival on the weekend, but it was also good weather, and there's water and there's sand, and there's just so many things that people love. So like Bondi has that ability to pull things together, but you're that in a human being.
Oh, well, that's very kind to say that, but human connection to me is the most powerful thing there is. So I will take any opportunity there is to connect with another human. And that could be as simple as a smile on the street. I discovered a long time ago, I'm an investor, and I discovered a long time ago an investment or a good investment will return a good dividend. And the beautiful thing about human connection is that you've only got to invest in a simple smile, and the dividend could be a smile. And that's powerful. If you put more time into that, if you decide that you want to talk to someone or find out about them, if you want to actually sit down with them and open your ears up and listen with your heart, you can really create a special connection which will strengthen all parties involved. So I never miss an opportunity to connect. I never miss an opportunity to tell someone I love them. And I think it's a powerful thing.
Have you always been like that?
I think so. I think, as you said in the intro, I faced cancer twice. The first time was a difficult time. No doubt about it. I was given 3 months to live, and we hadn't had children at that stage. And I realized, when I say it like this, we're all on the river of life, and we're all floating down, and we're splashing, and we're going over the rapids and through the eddies and into the beautiful pools, and we just accept it for what it is. But when you're given 3 months to live, as I was, what you've been given is a view of the waterfall of mortality, I call it. And when you see it, when you realize once I go over that, this is all over, you start to paddle backwards pretty quick, and you start to look to what's important in the river. And I think that has strengthened me. I've said it at a lot of talks. I wish everybody could be given the same view of life that I've been given without the consequences. They'd appreciate it more.
Thank you. Baz, for those who don't know you beyond TV, how do you describe who you are today?
How do I describe who I am? I'm an old bloke doing his best to raise a family in a community as a part of a country that I believe is really special. I'm a very curious human. I believe that curiosity is, I know curiosity is what strengthens resilience, and resilience is the inner workings of the shell that we have as confidence. So confidence without resilience isn't much good, and resilience without confidence isn't much good. But curiosity, the simple thing is that curiosity fuels both of those. So I'm a curious character. I believe the day you give up on curiosity, I think I actually said this to you once, we should be curious about our relationships. We should be curious on how we can do better with our job. Be curious on how we can do better for our society. Be curious how we can be fitter and more mindful. If you're continually curious, you're continually improving yourself. And that's one of the meanings of life.
So how does this version of you today differ from, say, Baz at 45?
Well, 45 was a really tough year for me. It's funny you touch on that. Sitting here, and as long as you've known me, I've always been a really confident person, and very confident. And I was in the building industry, and I was a developer, and I was very successful. But there was, from about 40, it started when I was 40, Leonie and I were trying to have children, and that was becoming a little difficult. So infertility was sort of the first trauma that came along for me. And because I enjoyed the facade I had at 45, and that being a big, strong, successful man about town, I liked that facade. And I didn't want anybody to view that facade as any different to that. So when we started battling with infertility, I stepped away from human contact when it came to that discussion. So that weakened my resilience. Not long after that, I had a really bad fall. I had an incredible fall. I fell 5 stories off a building, so that's 14 meters. Broke my back in 3 places, broke my leg in a couple of places, and did a whole lot of physical damage to myself. And to put that in perspective, any terminal velocity is 9 meters. So if you fall 60% of people that fall 10 meters die instantly. I fell 14 meters, and so I again was in incredible physical pain. I put on a lot of weight with that injury, and again, because I was so enveloped or so in love with the facade or the outer shell of me, I refused to deal with that trauma, and I said, I'm fine. I refused to show weakness. In 2004, I was 44. My beautiful mum lost her battle with cancer. This woman, my mum, is just a pure angel, an incredible human. And if anybody didn't deserve to suffer, it was her. And everybody was worried that I would crumble with that. But I again stood behind that facade. I didn't show the emotion that was breaking me inside. And to be able to not deal with it, you have to step back from human connection. So I started doing things like, and a lot of leaders, I like to share this with a lot of leaders. I started doing what I call the long trip home. I loved work, and I was great at work, and I was leaning on work. I'd stay at work all day, and I'd stay there as late as I could, and I'd avoid any human contact outside of work. And then I'd take the longest journey there was to get home, because I didn't want to discuss our infertility problems with Leonie. I didn't want to talk about how upset I was inside about mum. And I was sick of talking about the fact that I'd gotten overweight from the physical injuries that I was in. And when you're in that mood and that mindset, you start to lose human connection. And I stopped being curious on how I could be better. In fact, at that period of my life, I started to really dislike myself. I started to blame myself for the infertility. I definitely blamed myself that I didn't do enough for my mum. And Leonie and I were on about, if you're asked about 45, you hit it on the head. When I was 45, Leonie and I had finally had a little bit of success with our 12th attempt of IVF. We were 17 weeks with twins, pregnant. We'd had scans. We'd had seen the heartbeats. Me personally, for the first time, opened up to friends again, because I got really sick of telling people that this might be the time, because then you just had to watch their pain trying to talk to you about the fact that it didn't work out again. So I shared that with a few friends, and sure enough will do. I heard that very familiar scream from the ensuite that I was too familiar with. I knew that pregnancy was over. It was another miscarriage. And I think at 45, at that point, that was sort of a real breaking point for me. I'd lost my curiosity for life. I'd lost my self-belief. My resilience was gone. Therefore, the outer shell was there, but it was like an eggshell. It was easily dented. And then I completely withdrew from society for the 2 weeks. And anybody that goes through infertility issues know once you have a miscarriage, 2 weeks later you go and meet with your gynecologist and work on what's next. For us, that meeting gave us, he sat there and told us that our journey for fertility was over, because now Leonie has cervical cancer. That moment, and I say that moment, but when you're starting to really self-hate, and when you're going into depression, the timeline doesn't make a lot of sense. But I know from that point on, I'd fully committed to hating myself. I'd lost all quest or love of human connection. I despised human connection, and I lost all sight of curiosity of how I could be better. In fact, I convinced myself that the world would be a better place if I wasn't on it. I worked hard on a plan to end my life, and I won't go too deeply into that now, but it was someone reaching out to me, someone that I loved dearly and I hadn't spoken to for a long time. In fact, that's why they called me. They'd had 3 children previously, and I'd been at the hospital, the first person at the hospital, with joy and love, as I've always had. And, you know, the person who wants to hold the baby first and bring the big bunch of flowers and the chocolates and all that stuff. On his 4th child, he'd had a 4th child about 4 months earlier, and I hadn't even rung up. So he just figured, either I've turned into the biggest dickhead on earth or something's wrong. And thankfully he rang up and asked, was I okay? And it was an incredible, painful night, but also a night that I think saved my life, because once he heard me sobbing because I couldn't talk, and I'd made that decision to take my life. Once he'd heard that, my sobbing, he didn't hear me say any words because I couldn't talk, but he just kept saying to me, "I'm with you, Baz. I'm with you." And he was making the trek beeline straight to my house, and he arrived about 25 minutes later, and just leaned into the car and embraced me, and the power of that support and human connection was the start of me coming back to the guy that's sitting in front of you now. You know, it's a long story, that story, but that connection and my it was like a micro moment of self-belief. And with that, gave me a micro curiosity to how it could be better. And then that built, and I built my resilience up again, and that strengthened my confidence again. I was prepared for anything. I always say this, you don't wake up on a Monday morning depressed. It takes some time to get there, and you don't fix yourself in the afternoon either. It took me about, I think, 12 to 18 months to regain strength. And to regain that strength, I had to go back to my old ways of meditation, of breath work, of self-love and care. You have to fill your own cup of emotional equity before you can pour it. So I worked on that, and my beautiful wife was incredibly supportive. And to put bluntly, I was a complete arsehole to her through that period. I figured that if I was bad enough to her, she would leave me and somehow she'd be better off. That was my train of thought. So when I sit here and you say to me, what was I like at 45? I was a mess. But that mess was one of the biggest stepping stones to this great point I'm at now. And everything that goes wrong with anybody in life, if we can see those moments as things that could be done better, and then we can use those adverse moments as stepping stones and just keep going forward and keep being curious, we will find happiness again.
What was it about that moment that your friend reached out to you? What was it that gave you hope? Is it something he said? Was it just his presence?
Quite frankly, he said to me, well, I remember it really clear. It was a Thursday night. It was pouring rain, and I'd been sitting in the car for about 2 hours, and he rang me up, and he's a tradie, and I was able to say, "How are you?" And thinking that this could have been the last conversation I was ever going to have. And he said, "Well, Baz," in his beautiful way, this is a big bull of a man, and he'd been my apprentice like 20 years earlier. He said, "Well, it's Thursday night, so we're out of money," because most tradies are out of money by Thursdays. And so I've come down to the bottle shop to grab 3 beers. Simone's making toasted banana sandwiches at home, and we're going to watch the footy show and eat. And I just started to... That was what he said, the simplicity, the vulnerability, the honesty of him sharing that with me, it just allowed me to connect with the emotions that I was actually feeling. His vulnerability, the fact that he believed he could tell me anything and I wouldn't judge him. Whereas I'd spent the last 4 years thinking that if I said anything, people would judge me. And that's what allowed my resilience to drain. That's what allowed the chinks in my armor or my confidence. And I guess it was just a simple vulnerability and love and human connection, innocent human connection. He didn't ring up to save my life that moment. He just thought, we haven't spoken, and that doesn't seem right. We should talk.
How do people help in that situation?
Yeah, that's a very dramatic situation. Yes, yeah, but he didn't know the answer, so he just did what he could do, and that was to hold me and support me physically. Yeah.
I saw something beautiful on Instagram recently, which was, I think it was a boxing match, and it was a father and a son, and I think the son had lost the fight, and the father just went over and held the son, but he didn't say anything. And it was just like one of the most powerful moments I've actually seen, and I just watched that. And I've tried to adopt that myself with Oscar, where sometimes he may be upset and I'll just hold him. I don't have to say anything.
It's a real power for someone who's in a traumatic situation. And for Oscar, that could have been he's had an argument with Mimi, or it could have been he lost the ball, or it could be anything, or he's in trouble. So that trauma, and you see, at Are You Okay, we say okay is different for everybody. So there's no right or wrong when it comes to if you're not okay. So just showing up for your son or for his son is telling that person they have support. And it doesn't have to be worded. It can be felt. It's a motion of, it's a sense of belonging. And if we have a sense of belonging, we automatically have a sense of security. If we have a sense of security, gives us a sense of self-belief. And they're those little micro things that are required to build resilience.
With your journey and specifically what you said, what advice would you give to somebody, or what advice would you give to yourself? Because there's obviously a series of things. How would you not approach or tackle, but how would you perhaps go through those tough times differently today? Because you obviously...
Yeah. Well, it's really interesting. There's no doubt about it. I get emotional when I talk about this. I got more emotional in this conversation with you 20 years later than I did at the time. And people say that I'm vulnerable, and I like that word, but I do think it's a word that's bandied around a lot. I believe now I have no fear of anything, and I'm definitely not scared to show my emotions. Those times that I just spoke about, even thinking about them now, I'm sharing the most hurtful moments in my life. There would be something wrong if they don't hurt me. Back then, I used bravado. I used a facade, because I felt that showing my vulnerability or showing my emotions would scare the people around me, would scare the people that I was leading, would scare the people that work for me. But in actual fact, any good leader should always let the people that work with them and for them and around them know that they don't have the answers all the time. Because if I'm looking up to you and I realize you don't have all the answers either, all of a sudden I'm empowered. All of a sudden I'm a little stronger, and together we can conquer just about anything.
Yeah, that's interesting. On the topic of, or perhaps we'll call this vulnerability, what part of your story have you been reluctant to share because it might change the way people see you?
Well, now I'm not reluctant to share any part of my story. I thrive on storytelling. I'm a modern day elder. You're a warrior, and since the day we've met, we've been discussing how you are going to approach hurdles by talking about the hurdles that I've approached. Sharing conversation, sharing empathy and connectivity, human connectivity, is the most powerful thing for any society. First of all, for any individual, but then that ripples into society. If we can share a problem, we'll solve a problem. If we can't share a problem, we'll never solve it.
Interesting.
Can I put that into perspective?
Please, yeah.
I'll jump forward for you.
Go for it, yeah.
That was 2005, and I think I was right by about 2006 and a half, 2007. Now, as you know, Leonie and I went on we went on adoption trail, and then we discovered surrogacy. But in 2010, Christmas of 2011 it was, I had a bad surfing accident. Not a bad surfing accident. I was surfing. I went on a wave. I heard a big crack. A couple of months later, I was in the doctor's surgery, and I'd had some x-rays. It was 9 o'clock in the morning, and the doctor opened up the report of my x-rays, and I've never met this woman before in my life, but a tear came out of her eyes, and she asked me if I had family. I said, yeah, of course I've got family. What's wrong? I've got a headache and a sore neck and family. What's the problem? The long story of that day, or the short story of that long day was I spent the next, I think, 8 hours in St. Vincent's Hospital. I had MRIs, I had CAT scans, I had a rod pushed in past my artery into my spine and clunked into this giant tumour that was in the x-ray. And it was about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And I'm sitting in that doctor's surgery, or the clinical rooms that we call them, that I'm sure a lot of your viewers have been in, or if they haven't, they will one day. And there's 3 doctors in front of me. And the first doctor said to me, their exact words were, "Barry, my advice is to go home, tidy up your affairs. I think you've got about 3 months to live." I said, "Thank you for your opinion. I'm not interested in it. You don't know me, and I'd rather you leave the room." That's confidence. back with resilience. I looked at the next doctor and said, I'm not sure what you do, but I've lived a life. I've jumped over hurdles, and I'm going to do my best to jump over this hurdle. So if you do your best, you can know that I'm going to do my best, and I'll be happy with whatever the result is. That's resilience. That's a mechanism within the outer shell of confidence that can build and rebuild. And I wasn't going to waste a day thinking, or a second thinking about life's end. I was going to live every second I had for the rest of my life, whether it was a month, 3 months, or 30 years. And to do that, paddling backwards was to look for the best things I can do for myself to make sure that happens. And that's what gives me strength every day. That's why I share these stories.
When you say that's what the doctor said,
yeah,
did any part of you believe that you had? Any part of you believe the doctor that you had 3 months to live, or did you just flat out reject that?
Whether I had 3 months to live or not, I wasn't interested in her scenario for the next 3 months. Go home and get ready to die. No, I'd been in the ring with a heavyweight champion of the world in 2005. Depression, it's a killer. Okay. Well, I got through that, and the method I used to get through that was human connection, self-belief, doing everything I could physically for myself, doing everything I could mentally for myself. Now, I was just going to, my mindset is to take that into any battle I have. And quite frankly, in the 5 or 6 years that it had been, I'd worked hard on my physicality as well. I was fitter than I'd ever been. Mentally, I was tougher than I'd ever been. I'd used those stepping stones from earlier to be prepared for this fight. And I'll give you a spoiler alert, I'm still here.
Yeah, we know.
And the cancer came back in 2017, and they didn't give me a great prognosis then either. But, spoiler alert.
I want to ask you about that specifically, but I'm curious. Do you think that, let's say there were 10 other people that got the same diagnosis, mm-hmm. and the doctor said, go home and get your... How many would have just accepted that and gone home? And
Well, I think we live in a society... I think the world is changing rapidly. And, I'm not going to blame the doctor for anything. But they don't have a mindful approach to medicine. I do. I'm happy to go with the medicine and the science around it. But I believe... I'll put it in perspective for you. Don't quote me on the numbers here, but you're made up of about 300 trillion cells, okay? You make about 180 billion stem cells every day. And in 12 months, about 99% of the cells in your body will be completely renewed, okay? So how you harvest the cells today affect who you are tomorrow. So clearly, whatever I was doing prior to the cancer, I wanted to be really focused. What are some of the things I could have been doing negatively? Sure, I drank a little bit, but not a lot. But I stopped drinking. I drank coffee, a lot of coffee. I moved to decaf. Anything. I was so curious and so focused on what I can do to make sure that my life wasn't going to be over. Something worked.
So do you feel like you were already preparing for your recovery, if you like, well before the doctor said you've got 3 months?
Yeah, I didn't even see it as a recovery. I just said, you do what you do, and if I had 3 months, I had 3 months. I was going to live 3 months. I wasn't going to wait to die for 3 months. And, I just don't invest in negativity. See, if I invested, as we talked a little earlier about investing, if I invested in the fact that I had 3 months to live, what return can I get? What dividend can that pay me? Whereas if I invest in the fact that, fuck them, I'm going to prove you wrong, and that was probably my thought, I'm going to show you, you don't know how tough I am. I'm going to show you how tough a human can be. I mean, quite frankly, that first doctor never saw me again, so they don't really care. But in me, you just gave me another challenge. I'm going to prove you wrong. And if in 3 months and 1 day I died, I wouldn't know the difference anyway. All I know is I gave Baz DuBois gave it the best fight a human can possibly give. I'm happy with that.
Okay. What about the do or die treatment?
What do you mean by the do or die?
Did you have, was there a treatment that you...
Sure, I know. What you're referring to is the fact that when I was in my second cancer...
Yeah.
Is that what you're talking about?
I think so, yeah.
So, you know, there was 7 people on the ward with me. And you're in isolation for 21 days. And, well, I was in isolation for 21 days. Others had to go longer. I had stem cell transplant, massive chemotherapy. It was a hideous time of my life. But again, I believe self-belief had a huge impact on the way I dealt with the cancer and the treatment that came with the cancer. And what you're referring to is that I'm the only one that's alive now. And that's a fact. You know, I would say to other people on the ward, you know, their quest was to get back home so they could get down to the pub. And I said, you know, maybe this is the time you look at maybe changing some of those habits. And I said, you know, I'm not a religious person, but I said to myself, maybe to a greater power, I thought I was saying this too. I said, but I'll eat a piece of shit every day for as long as it takes if I don't die. You know, I'll do anything not to die.
So what was your deepest fear at that time?
Well, obviously at that time I had my beautiful twins then. And obviously I just had to know that, and that's what ramped this up. My fear, and I can still drift into that occasionally now, is if I allowed my mindset to manifest on the negativity of my situation, you will spiral. But the fear, if we want to hear it out loud, yeah, my children won't have a father. My wife won't have a provider. My wife won't have a partner. That's the fear. But what gain do I get from indulging in that fear? You know, when I wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and I think about that, if I think about that, I'll lay awake all night. Now, I need to sleep to create better stem cells for tomorrow. So if I wake up at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, I'll say to myself, okay, Baz, you're a 65-year-old guy living with blood cancer. What's the best thing you can do right now? And I might go for a walk. I might do some meditation, go out to the pool and just sit on the pool and do some breath work and come back and do my best to sleep. If I lay there and manifest and say, oh, now I'm going to be terrible on camera tomorrow, I'm going to forget my lines, all I'm doing is pulling more fear onto myself. Throw those sheets of fear off and say, 2 o'clock in the morning, I'm 65 years old. What's the best thing I can do to be ready for whatever's next? And 9 out of 10 times for me, that's breath work or go for a walk or do some meditation. That's my mindset now. I know I'll get a return on that. I won't get a return on the manifestation of negative thoughts.
Did you have to learn how to do that? How did you teach yourself how to do that?
Yeah, I've always meditated. It's an interesting thing. For men, I can only speak for men, but I do believe that men, when we go through those middle ages, that's where it was for me. We want to be a warrior longer than we are. I didn't want to be a modern day elder. I didn't want to be an elder. I wanted to stay a warrior. Okay, and I think that quest for that status in the tribe is what defeats us effectively. What we're better off doing is thinking about the whole tribe and moving on to your role as an elder to help the younger warriors. And then if we do that, we'll create a stronger society. And when you have children that are going to be relying on that society to thrive, that strength of that society is incredibly important.
So what would you say to men? Because if there is a transition between warrior to tribal elder, if you like, when is that transition in life?
Well, it's different for all of us. And, if you get married at 23 and you have a child at 24, I'm sure it's it's a different time to it was for me. I didn't get married till I was 40. I didn't have children till I was 52. So it's all different. And those things are what affected me. What affects you might be something different. The point is, and it's pretty simple really, you have to invest in you first. Fill your cup of emotional equity so that you have the energy and the resilience to fight your battles. And then you'll have some to pour on those that you love as well to help them with theirs. And the best way to pour emotional equity onto someone is sit with them, be supportive to them, listen to them with your heart, and react from there.
Can we go back to just the IVF component?
Mm-hmm.
Because I personally don't have any idea what it would be like to go through that. And probably many of the viewers listening to this would have no idea. But from what I understand, it's obviously an incredibly difficult period. Can you give us some context around what's involved and what that felt like?
Yeah.
And how to perhaps support somebody that's going through that?
Support. And we're all different. And I can speak from my perspective as I felt, I've always been an alpha male, a protector. And when my partner, when my beautiful wife had her first miscarriage, I felt that I'd let her down because we were both so hurt. I didn't really care about my hurt, but her hurt is what called borrowed trauma. I took some of that trauma from her. Then again, the second time, and it's like this. In one of my workshops, the art of communication, and there's a couple of different types of conversation. Now, most warriors, most of the leaders watching your podcast will be, there's three different types of conversation: a solution-based conversation, an empathy-based conversation, and a social-based conversation, a social conversation. Most leaders, and alpha males like I was, and alpha females as well, we're solution-based people. When my wife was being hurt by the physicality of a miscarriage and the mental pain of that as well, I kept kind of trying to come up with solutions for it. I think that's what happened is I needed to show that I was confident and I had a solution. Of course I don't have a solution, and the confidence is just bravado. So the more miscarriages we had, the more I was determined that this is what we should do. We're not meant to have babies. This is, a solution. This is the solution to stopping that pain. Whereas what I probably should have done personally is just be present, show up for my partner, and realize that I wasn't in control. And as I said to you earlier, as a leader and as an alpha male, I should have showed that I didn't have the answers. I should have had an empathy-based conversation. And so that's what I will always say. If a man feels that he's struggling, you will lessen the burden by sharing the struggle.
How do they do that? What does that sound like?
Well, to be personal, you and I met in the driveway once. You had your bags, and you were putting them into an Uber. And I said, well, you're going on holidays. Very much a social-based conversation. And you said, you started to cry, and you said, no, we can't do this anymore. I'm leaving. I don't know if you remember, but I loved you too, and I loved your family, and I love your family. And I just held you for a minute. And I don't have the answers for that, but I know that if you know I'm standing with you, you might be able to, we together can work to an easing of your pain at that moment. And if I could ease your pain at that moment with a sense of support and belonging and security, well, then you'll start to think clearly, at least, of what the real situation is.
I was going to talk about that because that was hard. I'd put stuff in my suitcase and I'd walked out. And the way I recall it is you saw me and you were in your car. And I think you instinctively knew something was up. perhaps you check with me, but I
got out of the car because I thought, he must be going away. I want to say, be safe, take care. Let me know if I can do anything. But you showed me your vulnerability, and that's the power of human connection.
I remember, and I've thought about this so much because I wanted to share it. The sadness I felt from you in that moment, I almost felt like I can't remember the words that you used, but I felt like a piece of you like crumble. And it like, in a way, it sort of soothed me because your vulnerability in that moment.
Yeah.
And I remember you I'll never forget. I think the way I recall it is you spent like 30 or 40 minutes with me.
Yeah, we did.
When you were about to get in your car and go somewhere.
Sure.
And I put those suitcases in my car and drove to my parents' house. And that was, I just walked out from the house and I was crying in the house and Chloe was crying and I didn't know what to put in the bloody suitcase. I just put some of my work suits in. And then thank God I walked out and saw you and you did that. I'll never forget that.
Thank you. And that's human connection. And whatever the words were, we were both probably available to be curious on how we can make this better. And like I said, the words, the words or the precise words aren't as important. It's just men or it's humans showing up for humans. Whether life turns out the way it turns out. But I believe that showing up for someone is a real micro power, empowerment. And well, the result, what's the result? The result is that we spent some time together. Hopefully your pain was eased slightly on that day. And I mean, you and I had a lot of discussions over the next couple of months through that period. And
couple of years, actually.
Yeah, a couple of years.
That day, Baz, you explained the concept to me. You may not recall, but it was something, I remember that spinning plates is what you said.
Yeah.
And I remember...
Well, that's you all over. Young, handsome man, beautiful young family, dynamic business person, making a name for yourself in a business. You bought a house that I thought was too expensive for you.
You were right, yeah.
So what I said to you that day was, you're trying to spin your career plate. You're trying to spin your warrior plate. You're trying to spin your family plate. You're trying to spin your romance plate. You're trying to spin all these plates. You can't. You've got to have everything that's important to you on one plate. And then all you've got to do is just maintain it. And for that to fit on that plate, you've got to know what you are, who you are, and what you stand for. And then make room for all those things: physical exercise, mental exercise, love, experiment, curiosity, family, growth of the children, income, savings. They've all got to fit on one plate. You can't spin different plates. It'll just look like a Greek festival in the end.
And I think at the same time, Chloe was spinning so many plates as well.
You both were spinning plates. Yeah.
I look back at that and I think that's actually, how do you make that work when there's so much going on?
Yeah.
I think...
And there's a lot, as if everybody doesn't realise it by now, I love you both dearly. There's a lot of facade to young warriors, male and female. There's a lot of facade. You love the image, and social media does this. I'm not saying social media for you particularly, but in the society we live in, how we turn up, how we walk into a room, plays a big part in our lives these days. And I think both of you are really trying hard to present the best view of yourselves. And without realising, this is critical, I'm not sure, without realising exactly how beautiful you both were. You were so conscious of, and I don't mean this in a physical sense, you're both amazing young people, raising an incredible, beautiful little family, but trying to show everybody else how important that is rather than show each other.
Yeah. I hear you when you say that. And there was a period where I thought we were a very good case study of how to get something wrong that should actually work, because there's love.
Mm.
And I think about how can people who love each other, who have beautiful children, who live in the suburb they want to live in, who work in jobs they're passionate about, we ticked all the boxes.
So did I when I was 45, though. Turned over, it doesn't sound like a lot, turned over 20 million in my last year living in a giant penthouse at North Bondi. Everybody wanted to be me. That's what I saw. Everybody wanted to be me, as you saw. Everybody wants to be Adrian Oddi. There's no doubt about it. Everybody wants to be Chloe, because this is a great looking image. But we need the resilience. Now I'm turning into a marriage counsellor again. We need that mechanism of resilience inside to keep that facade honest. And that's what's important. And to do that, you've got to understand how to love yourself and how to share that with others.
When you consider that, the core fundamentals, I do think social media does play a big toll in creating disconnect.
Yeah.
Because of what everyone's trying to do, which is
that's right,
showcase their best life at the expense of what could be right in front of them right now, which is
it's interesting. Turn of the last century, the smartest people in the room were the code crackers in the Second World War. These numbers might not be deadly accurate, but it'll go to a point. I think they had to resolve about 200 problems a day. And contrary to popular romantic movies, most of them had nervous breakdowns in 3 months, and I think the suicide rate was about 40%. Okay? Now, today in your life with social media and digital news and all that, we're faced with about 20,000 messages a day. So we've learnt in the last 2 decades to select the messages that we're going to deal with. So back in the day when I was talking about your parents and my parents, and even me, quite frankly, that's how old I am. But the word resilience wasn't bandied around much. It was just life. You had to be resilient. But now, especially for younger people, and I think this is going to be a problem down the track, because they're able to select the problems or the things that they want to deal with, they're losing the ability to face adversity. And love you as I do, I think that's a common denominator of young people these days is, no, I don't have the resilience to work with it when it's hard because I'm so used to picking the things that are easy. Does that make sense to you?
Do you mean it in the sense that...
This isn't personally.
No, I understand. No, I'm happy to be used as a case study though. Is this an example of when rather than doing the work, it's just easier to leave a relationship?
Totally.
And you can leave because you feel like, social media gives you a distorted image of what else is out there.
Totally. My wife is the most incredible woman I know, okay? What she put up with in me is incredible. But she knew me for a long time before I went into that state and that state, we can call it depression, but let's call it this: lack of curiosity of how I can be better, lack of resilience, and lack of self-care and self-love. She knew that wasn't me. And she knew that if she just stuck by me, eventually I'd find my way again. She tried everything she could do to help me find that way. But being that person, I said, I don't want advice from you. I don't want you to think that I need advice. I want you to think that I'm the most powerful man there is. And if you think any less than that, there's something wrong with you. Do you know what I mean? That's distorted thinking. And yeah, I say this to you. I think that there's a little level of that in a lot of couples these days. But she stuck by it. I didn't do as well as she did. And the results of that is, like I said, I've been through the worst of the worst. But there's not a lot of people that you're ever going to interview who have been through what I've been through and are still alive, quite frankly. So I've seen it. I've seen a lot, and I know that belief in that there's goodness in me somewhere, and she just stuck to it. It's an incredible asset.
It's amazing. I want to touch on one more personal experience I had with you that really impacted me. And again, I'm not sure if you recall, but we were down at the local coffee shop, Birachina,
Mm-hmm.
and I was sitting on a crate, and it was about a week before my operation, and I was feeling a bit stressed out, and you walked over to me and you said, "You look stressed out. What's going on?"
Mm-hmm.
And I was trying to do my will, and I was trying to do my will because I said, if I don't make the operation, I've got to get this sorted. And I remember saying to you, how much should I leave the kids and how much should I leave Chloe? And I'm going to share with you how I remember the conversation going.
Yeah.
And then you can fill in the gaps. But I think the first thing you asked me is, how much are you actually worth? How much have you got? 100 million or something like that?
It must be a phenomenal amount of money to be worried about at this point in your life.
And I said, no, it's not that much. And you're like 50 million, 20 million, whatever it was, right? And I was like, no. And I think you said, look, well, whatever you leave them, they'll probably spend in a couple of years. But it's not what you leave your children. It's what you instill in your children.
That's right. It's a legacy.
That's what will last forever. It's teaching them to catch the bus, which I actually don't even know how to do anymore. But I haven't called public transport for a long time. But I still remember how impactful that was on me. And I've shared it maybe 1,000 times. It's not what you leave your children. It's what you instill in them. That conversation changed everything for me again. Do you actually?
Yeah, I remember it really clearly. I love you, Adrian. You know that. And like I said, I knew that you were going through some health battles. I had Chloe on the phone to me, worried about you. And I'd seen you. You're sitting there, and you were just at a loss. You didn't. And I recognized that man. I recognized that man in me. You know, trying to be stoic when you have every right to be scared. Okay, but then to be investing in what's going to happen to your money when we could be investing in how to be better prepared for this operation for the cancer removal, and I said to you, you know, you were down to not minute figures, but this percentage and that percentage, and I said the best thing you're going to leave them is who you are and how you emotionally support them, and investing in that. There was just no. That was a good conversation. I don't remember the detail exactly, but my philosophy would be, hey, you're a beautiful, strong man, and we've got 7 days to be even stronger for the preparation for this. And what happens to your money, no one really gives a shit about. Your kids sure as hell don't care. That your kids would trade every cent that you could ever possibly leave them for one extra day with you. You know, it's your wife. I mean, you guys are battling, but do you think she wouldn't give up everything for you to have more time on this earth? Of course she would. So to be focusing on something so trivial when you could be focusing on something that would add to the, you know, to add to your strength for what was coming. Yeah. It was a good chat.
It was awesome advice.
Good, you know, but I'll say this, and I'll say it till I'm blue in the face. You have great chats if you chat. And I'm not scared to chat. You know that. And so one of the reasons, apart from your nature, of course, is that our friendship has flourished so much, because I love hearing what it's like for a young warrior now. You know? And I think it'd be scary to be in your position right now. And I'm interested how you navigate it. And sharing even that conversation strengthens you, and it strengthens me. Therefore, it strengthens the society that our beautiful 4 children are going to be in. And as 2 men, as an elder and a warrior, our job is to prepare the tribe so that they can thrive as we have done.
It's interesting, as I feel like the separation and the health scare for me has given me perspective as well. And it's interesting because I think I now navigate. I navigate definitely life differently. But I think one of the biggest things is that I stop sort of chasing all the time. I don't know how to. I don't know if you stop chasing or you see what's important. I mean, you know how important it is to get those moments with the children, and you'll probably get that sale anyway. Do you know what I mean? There's a focus on what's important. On the topic of fatherhood, so these are some of the questions that I had for you, right? So how has fatherhood reframed what legacy means to you?
Explain it to me differently.
Well, is that what you said to me? Is that what you instill?
Yeah.
in your
Before I
children?
had children, when I was in my 40s, there you go. When I was in my 40s, I wanted my children to have whatever Kerry Packer's children had. Okay. But now what I want them to have is honesty, integrity, self-belief, discipline, and curiosity. And if they have that, everything else will come. And believe it or not, it's probably easier to give them money than those things. As a parent, it takes a lot of work to give your child those things or to instill those things in a child. It takes work.
So to the parents now, can you share with them how they would instill those beliefs?
Oh, by doing them, by standing up for them, standing beside them, allowing them to fall in a safe situation, allowing them to face adversity. You know, I'm dealing it with myself. My children are 13 years old. Bennett says, "Dad, can I ride down the road?" And I go, yeah, be careful. You know, I'm nervous to let him go. But, you know, we've got to trust that they're safe, and we've got to make sure they're safe, but we've got to allow them to believe that they're testing themselves. And you know, just recently, I shared an experience with the children. I did a TV show where I took some, it's a wellness show, and my job as a celebrity, if you will, was to take someone, in this particular case, it was a carer on a holiday, because this lady had been a carer for 29 years of a severely autistic, a non-verbal autistic son. So hasn't had much of a holiday in all that time. And it was really funny. One of the things we did was rock climbing. Okay, we were going to zip line a 30-meter fall. And prior, I was saying how I used to do a lot of this. I'm going to be good at this. When I got to the edge, I shit myself. It was really, really scary. And my knees were wobbly, and I got nervous. But I knew I was safe because I was hooked in 3 points. Nothing could happen. And I finally jumped off, and I said to the kids as soon as I shared that story in great detail, because I do love telling stories. And then they said, to my joy, "Can we try that, Dad?" And I said, "Yep, let's get up there. Let's all do that together. Let's see if Mum wants to do it as well." And Mum said she would like to do it as well. So you've got to show. You've got to, yeah, this is hard, but we're going to do it. And if we're having an argument with our partner, or you know, that show that things can be resolved. You know, one thing I do with the children is if they're arguing, I never say shut up and stop arguing. I never say that. I think I said that to you. I say, okay, front room, let's understand why we're having this argument, and we're going to resolve this problem. Well, I'm going to teach you how to resolve problems. I'm not going to tell you to hide problems. I'm not going to tell you to just stop talking. I'm going to encourage talking. And now when I say, "Are you guys arguing again?" Bennett and Arabella will both say, "No, Dad, you're right. I was in the wrong. And sorry, Bennett," or "Sorry, Arabella." They've learned how to resolve problems. We live in a society that allows us to avoid problems and amplify issues, whereas resolving a problem is a skill and it has to be taught.
Amazing. So you taught them the skills to resolve. You didn't fix the problem for them.
No, you can't fix a problem. No, it just extends the problem to a later date. And you've met my kids.
Beautiful children. Love them.
I just wanted to hear that.
Hey, they are beautiful kids. Okay, so on the topic of your kids, right? I'm just trying to understand what you would say in this situation. Mm-hmm. Let's say you were faced with...
I don't always get it right.
Well, let's say you were faced with this situation, something scary that was ahead of you right at the moment, right? Perhaps a health scare. I'm just being dramatic, right? And the kid said to you, "Dad, are you going to be okay?"
Yes, of course I am.
That's how you would answer?
Yeah. And you've got to remember, this is interesting. I'm not sure. When I got the second cancer, the children were 6 or 7. they don't understand mortality of that. And every journalist that spoke to me, I announced that cancer on TV, and so everybody knew about it the next day. And interview after interview, they said, how do you talk to the kids about this? And I said, I talk to the kids like they're 7-year-olds. I get on a 7-year-old's level and say, Daddy is sick, and he's going to have a really, really strong medicine, and it's going to be hard for him, but we'll get through this together. Now they're 13. They will probably have a better understanding of mortality and what serious illness looks like. So I would probably broach it slightly differently, but I would speak to a 13-year-old. I never try and bombard a child with an adult's thoughts. I would say, I'm really sick again. Is there anything that you want to know? I'll probably start it like that. Hopefully I don't have to, but that's how I'd probably start it. Now, you've got to talk to who's in front of you. And that doesn't matter if it's two leaders in a corporation or a hierarchical situation in a corporate world, or your 6-year-old child. Speak to that child and don't assume they understand how an adult thinks. I do a podcast with my children every year. Anybody can do this on a phone. And, we all still listen to the recordings when I asked Arabella, if you had a superhero power, what would it be? And she said hugs. Because that's how a kid thinks. She thinks that hugs makes everybody happy. They don't understand the complexity of life at 6, but a hug means a hell of a lot, and for me, that's why when a little child is really upset, I don't try and solve their problem for them there. I just, first of all, get down on their level and hold them and let them know that I'm here to talk this through. What do you think? Why do you think you feel this way? So it's just talk to who's in front of you.
Okay, so when it comes to adults, and in particular, like on the topic of Are You Okay Day?
Yeah.
What would have been the best way to connect with someone on Are You Okay Day? Like know it's a simple question, but a powerful question, but what advice would you have given for the general public on that day to check in with their friends?
Advice I give every day. Are you okay? Every day. So I'll tell you this, when I was depressed, the last thing I was going to do was share it with anybody. Okay. Probably the signs were there for me, but we lived in a different era. We don't want to put the onus on the person who's depressed. If you've got a friend or a colleague or a relation, a family member that seems out of sorts, you just take the opportunity to, and a good way to take that opportunity is say, hey, have you got time for a chat? Okay, and make time for that chat, and then sit down with them and say, how is everything going? And just listen. Don't offer a solution-based conversation. Lead with questions. And if sometimes you're not going to get the answer you thought you were going to get, 9 out of 10 times they're going to say they're okay. So you follow up. If you weren't okay, would you share that with me? Would you be able to? And I often use the one is, you're doing better than me because I'm really struggling lately. And if I was going through what you were going through, I would find it tough. And then they're maybe going to say, well, it has been tough, but I think we'll get through. Oh, do you think you're going to be able to manage it? How are you going to manage it? That starts a dialogue. It's really interesting. 75% of people believe that they're uncomfortable to ask that question, or they're going to invade someone's privacy by asking that question, are you okay? But we know statistically, I think it's about 85% of people that are asked that question feel a sense of belonging and security and feel better for the question. So we live in a state at the moment where it's awkward to ask, but if you ask, people feel better. So I think we have to be brave, be curious on how we can be better for our society, and trust your gut, ask the question, listen, encourage them if they need help, and then follow up, check in with them a couple of days later or a week later. That's human connection.
That question, if you weren't okay, would you feel comfortable sharing, is such a good question.
Yeah.
I'd never considered that.
Yeah. Well, just lead with any question that is in your language. We're all different. And, you know, are you is a great way to start anything because it's open. Are you? Good, bad, or in between. And okay, what is okay for you is different okay for me. So there's no rules there. You don't have to, like, are you 100% fine? That's not what we're asking. Are you as fit as you've ever been? Are you okay? What does that mean? You're doing right? You're enjoying the football on the weekend? You're paying the bills? Are you okay? It's just a really open, easy way to start a conversation. It isn't so much the question, but it's a conversation that could follow, because that conversation can be the catalyst to saving someone's life.
When it comes to men, though, men find it harder to speak about this.
They do. That's why we rely on other men that know them and care them and love them. If they see them walking out of the room out of their home with a suitcase, get out of the car and say, "Hey, how you going? You okay?" You know.
And do you think that just comes down to that bravado that we have as men, or the facade? Why is it so hard for men to ask for help?
Well, because as men, we would think someone might be invading our privacy if they'd done that, or they think that we're weak. If someone asks, you know, the average man thinks, if someone says to, well, I don't know if they do think that, but it'd be easy to make an argument for this, is that if someone asks me if I'm okay, it means that I mustn't look okay. Now, I don't want to impose that on someone else, but it's the way you frame it. It's the first part of it is this: if you invite someone to a conversation and then you sit down and you listen to them, you're showing up for them, and that little micro power is the start of a huge mountain of strength.
I've got a friend at the moment who isn't in the best headspace, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong here, but when people sort of get into that state of mind, they start to feel like they're a burden on everybody else. They start to sort of abandon all their friendships.
Yeah, they step away from human connection.
So then the actual friends can interpret that as, oh, that person doesn't want me in their life. But what I've experienced is that sometimes that person actually feels a lot of guilt and shame about where they're at. They don't feel like they're lovable. These are the sorts of things that I've personally experienced. Yeah. How does someone help somebody in that state? And I think what might happen is you might have a conversation and the conversation seems to go okay, but then there may not be any contact for a few weeks or something like that.
Sure.
Is it just...
It's micro moments. If you show up for them, it's a micro moment. They might say they're okay. Say, cool, let's catch up again next week. I really enjoyed this. And then check in through the week. You still got time to catch up on Wednesday? I just love sitting in the sun with you the other day. Okay, just keep following up, because each time someone realizes that you're standing up for them, or they're worthy of your connection, it gives them a micro step of strength. And we're not going to solve... If someone's depressed and down in your life, it's quite... what's the word for it? Arrogant, maybe? There's a softer word than arrogant. It's arrogant to think that you can ask them a question and you're going to solve all their problems. No, we're not trying to do that. We're just letting them know that there's someone that cares. That makes you feel better. We're going to let them think that there's someone that's there for them. That's going to make you feel better. We're going to let them know that if there is a problem, they're there to share with it. Well, all of a sudden they're building that conversation that I told you about I was having in my head. They might change that from, I don't deserve to be here anymore, I've done everything wrong, to, not everybody thinks I'm doing it wrong. Adrian still cares about me. And I've given him every reason to think that I don't need it, but he still just keeps coming. He just keeps standing up for me.
What about if that person just can't see light at the end of the tunnel no matter what? So they've lost the ability to have any form of curiosity around how things could improve. How do you go beyond the checking in and supporting?
It'd be unlikely we're making scenarios up here. It'd be unlikely that you get to a point where that person doesn't divulge some, you did. I mean, a lot of the people in my partner's acting like an idiot lately. Okay? You hear that all the time. Now, my scenario for that is if my mate is telling me that the person that I've known for 10, 20 years and he married and he loved is saying that she's been an idiot lately, there's something wrong. Okay? So, and I've been in a pub and a friend of mine says, because I've caught up with this friend because I knew there was something wrong, and he said, I'm not going to say the name, but my wife's been a dickhead, blah, 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 right? I said, why? What's she doing? Well, she's spending far more money than we're earning. I go, have you told her that? No, well, I'm not going to say we're broke, so, I would say, I had to tell Leonie that I was struggling financially at points in my life, because if I didn't, I was just going to go further and further down the hole. And he goes, yeah. I mean, I just don't want to let her think that we're struggling for money, but you are. So share that, and then then I would say, in that case, do you think it would be advisable, or do you think it'd be a good idea if we got some professional advice? Encourage that professional advice. You can come up with 100 scenarios where this doesn't work, but the fact is, if you sit down and take the time and give yourself to a connection with another human, there is only a positive that can come from it.
So in that instance, that person, in his desire to be a protector, provider, was probably causing more damage.
Of course it was.
By not opening a conversation.
Of course it was, yeah. But I was able to open that conversation up. By the end of it, she's saying, she's unbelievable. I don't know how she puts up with me. I mean, sure, I wish she didn't spend so much money, but, maybe I should just tell her. Maybe I should just say, we can't afford that holiday this year. I said, do you reckon that'll work? He goes, I think I'm going to have to say that. We're solving problems by them answering their own questions.
I've got some short questions, but before we do those, I want to ask you about social media and just tap into what we discussed before we started recording. Like we discussed the difference between, say, Instagram and LinkedIn. But my question is just this desire for likes and followers and
social media is a tribe, and there's different types of tribes. But the thing is, with the social media tribe, we don't have anybody that we can rely on there. Okay, I think we should have our top 5 and everything. There's 5 people in my life where if I need something, I know I can call them. Okay, you don't have anyone on social media like that. No one. There's no one you can rely on social media. Sure, if they're your friend, you can, but I have a decent following, and I know my followers really love what I do, but they can't rely on me, and I can't rely on them. It's not a tribe of depth, so you can't put too much weight on it. That's my view of it. We talked about LinkedIn, and I see LinkedIn as a tribe of trying to improve yourself through discussion, through commentary, through discussion, through debate, and I often share problems on LinkedIn. Whereas if you share a problem on a social media, that problem is generally picked up and reshared as a problem. No one resolves any problems there.
And then how does this relate to young people?
Well, as I said, the messaging. You learn as a young person that if you don't want to deal for something, you just swipe it, or whereas we need to be able to lean to that muscle of resilience is the most important thing you can have. And the only way you get it is to lean into adversity. There is no adversity on social media. There is none. There's no adversity. There's no physical or mental adversity in it. Now, obviously, criticism is, and that's a whole new world. That's a different world altogether. The criticism that one can get on social media is incredibly dangerous, because whilst that is that, criticism is these days been allowed to affect your mindset, and that's a dangerous place. I don't know if I've explained that really well.
Let me ask you this. What is your biggest concern around social media and your children?
To me, it's a much bigger thing than social media. My children are learning the lessons in life that will allow them to... I don't study social media for my children. No, I teach my children integrity, honesty, self-belief, respect for others, and empathy. Okay? Now, if you have that, that's how you approach social media. If you have self-respect and self-belief and empathy for others, your social media journey, given that it's will be a healthier one than if you don't have those. So that's what I teach. I teach those things. That's my legacy. That's the strength that will get them through those types of dramas.
And what about, just out of interest, with your own account? Because no doubt you would have faced some criticism at some point. How do you... I find it frustrating that someone would direct that sort of thing towards you, because I know your message. But how do you deal with that criticism?
Well, I'll tell you a funny story. When I first started on TV, I think it was about 14 years ago, Twitter was just coming out. There wasn't Instagram yet. There was MySpace and things like that, right? Shows how old I am. But I remember everybody loved me. Don't forget, my job on TV is to give people stuff. I give someone a new kitchen or a new bathroom every week. So I'm a pretty loved guy. Not that I pay for any of that stuff, but I get the credit for it. But I remember this one guy, he really hated my guts. I don't know why. I slept with his girlfriend a long time ago. I don't know what it was, but he hated me. And every time, and I had 80 followers on Twitter. Okay, 80 followers, my first month in social media. And this guy used to say, anything I said, he would say, "What would you know, you squinty-eyed git?" He hated me. He just hated me, right? And then I remember that he made this one, and I just used to look at it, and at first I thought, if you ever bump into me in the pub, I'm just going to knock the shit out of you. That's what I was thinking, right? And then I started to think, why does he dislike me so much? And then Jamie Jury said to me, you got to get in the room with them. He says, because they're behind a keyboard and they're brave. And he said, just write something back to him. And I remember writing, I said, mate, I really appreciate your feedback. I'm sorry I'm not hitting the mark for you, but I'm doing the best I can. I'm not joking. That guy became my biggest fan for about the next 5 years. He went from hate to, oh my God, this guy's he's taken notice of me. It was really funny. What do you know, you squinty-eyed git? He said it every other comment. He really hated me. I said, mate, I'm doing my best. Sorry, I'm not hitting the mark for you. And thanks for your feedback, I said. What can you do? That's how I handle it. But I don't get a lot of criticism, quite frankly. We talked about it. I did a post about the footy the other day, and you got your diehard NRL fans. That wasn't what my post was about. My post was about just the fact that I think young people generally, and humans, the society, our government, everybody looks for a reason to blame someone for our mistakes rather than taking ownership of it. And that's what my post was about. I wish as a society we could take ownership of our mistakes, and that would represent humanity a lot better.
Okay. I've got a couple of relatively short, sharp
it's
questions.
Lucky this isn't a tape. We would have had to change tapes.
I know. Well, we're nearly done. Finish the line. Love, to me, now means?
Love. It means everything. That's...
Okay. What are 3 lines or statements, or 2 or 3, that you want your kids to remember forever?
Honesty will always be a light to follow. Good question. I am more than just me. I'm many people, and I'm loved by many. I'm a brother, a sister, a father, a daughter, an auntie, an uncle. I'm not just one, I'm many. And if you believe that, you'll always have someone to share with.
It's nice. The bravest conversation you've had this year?
The bravest conversation I have often, I had it with you and I have it regularly in my role as a speaker and workshop, to be brave enough to share pain is a brave conversation. And I wish we all had more brave conversations. I wish we were all brave enough to have that conversation that we're hurting.
If every Aussie did one thing for their neighbour this week, we'd be a better country because?
Well, because A, we're having human connection, but two people make anything better than one person can. A partnership has 400% more chance of being successful than a single entity. So if you recognise your neighbour and you reach out to your neighbour for anything, we're making it a lot more powerful.
A daily non-negotiable for you?
A daily non-negotiable. There's some cliched answers in this, isn't there? It's just to realise how beautiful today is and that it could be your last.
A mistake you're oddly grateful for?
I've never made a mistake in my life. There's just a shitload of things I'm not going to do again.
I love that. I love that. And then finally, what truth or lesson do you want people to carry forward from your story?
That sharing is power. Emotion and the sharing of emotion is strength. And human connection is important. Is one of the most important things you can do. And be forever curious on how you can be a better version of yourself.
Can you just tell the viewer how to access your course or how they could access you?
Sure, how they can access me. It sounds like the 80s. Yeah, you can go to my website, barrydubois.com. Reach out to me on Instagram. I enjoy any connection. And yeah.
I'll put it all in the show notes.
Thank you.
Baz, I want to say thank you. I nearly got emotional in the intro because it means you're just one of the most amazing people I've ever met.
No.
You're bigger than a mentor to me. You're a father figure as well. You really are.
Thank you. That means a lot to me.
Yeah, my life is better because of you. And so is the lives of my children because of people like you. And because of what you shared with me, I've been able to share that with so many people as well. So thank you for being there that day when I needed somebody the most. Thank you for being at the coffee shop. Just thank you for being thank you for, you're always there. You always seem to surface. And I mean it sincerely. You're one of the most amazing humans I've ever met. And I'm so happy and grateful that I get to share this conversation with people that I know that are listening, but thank you for everything you do.
Thank you. I mean, the ripple effect of love is one that never ends. And I think we should all lean into that a little bit more. Thanks, Adrian.
Pleasure.